When Anna's husband walked out on her, he didn't just leave behind their marriage, he left behind a woman shattered, standing at the edge of a life she no longer recognized. For years she had devoted herself to him, sacrificed her dreams so he could chase his, only to be discarded when she could no longer give him the excitement of youth. The small town they lived in wasn't kind to women like her either. People whispered behind her back, their pity laced with judgment, as though she had somehow failed in being left alone. Nights were the worst, when silence pressed against her chest like a stone, reminding her of everything she'd lost. Yet, in that emptiness, something unexpected stirred. She discovered she still had a heart big enough to care for others, even when no one seemed to care for her. It was during one of those gray, rain-soaked afternoons that Anna first saw them, 3 children, thin as reeds, huddled beneath the awning of the town's closed bakery. Their clothes were torn, their faces smeared with dirt, but what struck Anna most was not their appearance but their eyes. They weren't the eyes of children who had merely skipped a meal or two, they were the eyes of those who had been forgotten by the world. Something inside her broke at that sight, and before she even knew what she was doing, she walked toward them with an umbrella, kneeling down to their level. They flinched at first, as if expecting to be chased away, but Anna only extended her hand and asked softly, "Are you hungry?" They were, and not just for food, but for warmth, safety, and someone to look at them without cruelty. Anna took them into her modest home that very evening. She didn't have much, her husband had taken the savings, and her job at the library barely covered the bills, but she gave them everything she could. Soup simmered on the stove, blankets were pulled from closets, and for the first time in what must have been months, the children slept with full stomachs in beds that smelled faintly of lavender. Anna lay awake listening to their steady breathing, tears burning her eyes. She had been abandoned, yes, but perhaps life had delivered her a new purpose in return. The days turned into weeks, and the bond between Anna and the 3 children grew with astonishing speed. She learned their names: Michael, the eldest at 12, whose protective nature made him seem older, Sarah, 10, with eyes that still sparkled despite everything, and little Jacob, only 7, who clung to her like a shadow. They had no memory of parents worth mentioning, only fragmented recollections of being passed from one neglectful relative to another until finally, there was no one left to take them in. The streets had become their home, and survival their only goal. But under Anna's care, they began to rediscover what it meant to be children. Laughter returned, cautious at first, then bolder, filling the house with a light that Anna thought she'd never feel again. Of course, it wasn't easy. Money was tight, and there were nights Anna went to bed hungry so that the children could have seconds. Some neighbors criticized her, warning that taking in 3 kids with no legal ties was reckless, that she was only setting herself up for disappointment when the state inevitably got involved. But Anna didn't listen. She filed the paperwork, fought through the endless bureaucracy, and after months of persistence, she officially adopted them. They weren't orphans of the state anymore, they were hers. And the day she signed the papers, holding their trembling hands in the courthouse, Anna felt a joy deeper than any she'd known even in her marriage. Still, there was something peculiar about them she couldn't quite put into words. For children who had known only hardship, they carried themselves with a quiet grace, a poise that didn't match their ragged beginnings. Sometimes their speech slipped into oddly formal phrases, words no street child should know. Once, Anna had caught Michael sketching on a piece of scrap paper with such detail and refinement it made her wonder who had taught him. But she dismissed it as coincidence, quirks of survival and hidden talent. All she knew was that they were her children now, and nothing else mattered. What Anna didn't realize was that the past she thought they had left behind wasn't gone, it was waiting, looming like a storm cloud over the horizon. For these 3 children were not simply forgotten souls scraped off the street. They carried a lineage, a name hidden by time and silence, one tied to a fortune that most could only dream of. They were heirs, though they themselves had no idea, to a legacy worth $60 million. And while Anna tucked them into bed each night, believing she had rescued them, the truth was more extraordinary than any dream she had ever dared to imagine. She hadn't saved 3 abandoned children, she had stumbled into a destiny that would change her life forever. Life in Anna's small house took on a rhythm that felt both ordinary and magical. Mornings began with the smell of pancakes or porridge, and evenings ended with books read aloud in the living room, the children nestled around her like they had always belonged. For the first time in years, Anna felt whole. But destiny, as it often does, was already shifting beneath her feet. One chilly November afternoon, As she hurried the children home from school, a sleek black car rolled to a stop at the corner. Its tinted windows lowered just enough for a man in a sharp suit to watch them with an unsettling intensity. Anna felt her stomach tighten, instinctively pulling the children closer. The car drove off moments later, but something about it lingered like a shadow. Michael noticed too. "They've been watching us," he whispered that evening when Sarah and Jacob had fallen asleep. His young face looked far too old under the dim light, his words heavy with worry. Anna brushed it off at first, telling herself it was just her imagination, but unease began to creep into her daily life. Strangers seemed to notice the children in ways they hadn't before, double-taking on the street, staring a second too long in the grocery store. Anna thought perhaps it was because of how quickly the children had blossomed since she'd taken them in, their clothes clean, their smiles bright, their eyes filled with life again. But deep down, something told her this was more than casual curiosity. The truth began to unravel by accident. One weekend, Anna took the children to the local library where she worked, letting them wander the shelves while she sorted returned books. Michael disappeared into the history section, and when Anna came to check on him, she found him staring at an old newspaper article laminated in a local archive binder. His face was pale, his fingers trembling over the page. Anna leaned closer and froze when she read the headline, "Tragedy Strikes Prominent Hastings Family, Couple Declared Missing at Sea." Beneath it was a photograph of a man and woman dressed in expensive clothing, their smiles warm but unmistakably powerful. Between them stood three young children, faces blurred by time, but familiar enough to make Anna's breath catch. Michael quickly shut the book, but it was too late. Anna had seen it. The resemblance was undeniable. The Hastings family wasn't just wealthy, they were one of the richest in the state, owners of vast real estate holdings, international companies, and an old family fortune whispered about in gossip columns. Their mysterious disappearance had left the estate tied up in endless legal battles, but what no one knew, or so it was believed, was what had happened to the children. And now, Anna realized with a jolt, those children were sitting in her living room eating spaghetti for dinner and calling her mom. The puzzle pieces began fitting together with terrifying clarity. Their unusual manners, the way Sarah instinctively arranged the cutlery before every meal, Jacob's strange ability to play classical tunes on the piano despite never having lessons, Michael's quiet leadership that seemed far beyond his years, it all suddenly made sense. These weren't just abandoned children, they were heirs to a fortune worth $60 million. But if that was true, then why had no one found them? Why were they living on the streets when lawyers and investigators had supposedly been searching for them for years? Anna wrestled with the questions late into the night, torn between fear and awe. She wanted to protect them, to shield them from the world, but she also knew the truth could not stay hidden forever. And indeed, the world had already begun to close in. The black car appeared again, this time parked outside the schoolyard. Sarah whispered of a woman who had approached her, asking her name in a voice too sweet to be trusted. And one evening, Anna came home from the grocery store to find the mailbox stuffed with letters bearing a golden crest she didn't recognize. She didn't open them, too frightened of what they might say, but her heart knew, someone had discovered who the children were. One stormy night, a knock came at the door. Anna nearly jumped out of her skin as she opened it to reveal a tall man, the same one she had glimpsed in the car. He introduced himself as Mr. Blackwood, an attorney for the Hastings estate. His eyes scanned the children behind her with a flicker of recognition before settling on Anna. "We've been searching for them," he said, his voice even but edged with something urgent. "They are the rightful heirs, and the time has come to bring them home." Anna's heart pounded as the children clung to her. Home, hadn't she already given them one? She wanted to slam the door, to tell him they were hers now and no fortune could ever replace the bond they had built. But Blackwood's words sank into her like cold water. $60 million, a legacy, a destiny she could not ignore. For the first time, she realized that what she thought was a simple act of kindness had entangled her in a story far larger, far more dangerous, than she had ever imagined. As the thunder rolled outside, Anna stood frozen in the doorway, torn between protecting the life she had built and facing the storm of wealth, power, and secrets that now threatened to tear it all apart.